The Knicks took a 2-0 series lead over the Celtics. And if you haven't put together the context clues, that's why Kyle's not feeling the best this morning as we record here, a morning on the West Coast. That being said, that's 2 straight 20-point comebacks for the Knicks to beat the defending champions, to take this 2-0 series lead. None of us really expected it to be here right now. And I say this fully acknowledging that this series could go back to Madison Square Garden and the Celtics could tie the series up. But based on what you've seen so far, based on the late game warts, based on all the slander that is coming toward Boston right now, probably justified at this point, what can you make of this series so far?
Yeah, the slander is more than justified. Like, everything that's being said about this team this week is more than deserved because that's the way that they're playing. You said it yourself. 2 games in a row where they blew a 20-point lead in the playoffs. In NBA history, no team had done that in the same postseason. Never mind 2 games in a row at home. And they're the defending champs. So, I guess that's where you start. You build the 20-point lead, can't hold on to it. They kind of turn into prevent offense. You see more of that your turn, my turn, like we saw from the C's of old, not really this version that usually is working the ball around, finding the open man, finding the best shot available. They're pressing a little bit. They missed 75 threes in 2 games. It just doesn't even sound real when you say it out loud. They made 1 field goal in the last 8 minutes of the game last night.
That's crazy.
It's an entire, I was going to say anomalies, which is like kind of funny considering like that's like the fake Jason Tatum nickname. But like, it's been 2 full games of anomalies. Like, the Celtics shooting percentages are down over 10% in basically every single category that you look at. Chris Forsberg over on Twitter had tweeted out a breakdown of catch and shoot threes, corner threes, above the break, off the dribble, all these different, types of shooting metrics, and they're all down for the Celtics. Jason Tatum has not played up to the standard that he needs to for the Celtics to be at their best. He's made 1 field goal in the 4th quarter of the first 2 games. Jaylen Brown has not played up to his standard. Derek White has not played up to his standard. They're playing good defense. They've played good defense for 6 out of the 8 quarters of this series, but it just all falls apart in the 4th quarter. And I don't want to make this all about the Celtics because there's something to be said about the Knicks too. Mm-hmm. The resilience. They keep fighting when they're down. I know it has to be written on the whiteboard in locker rooms when you're playing the Celtics that like this team tends to give up big leads in they were 46-1 going into the playoffs when they had a 16-point lead this season. And now they've lost 2 games in a row like that. So, it felt like they had gotten over that hump of, giving up big leads and letting teams back into games. But if you keep your foot on the gas and you got Jalen Brunson on that side, clutch player of the year, he has 40 more points in the 4th quarter than any other player in the playoffs. He's completely dominating the clutch, completely dominating 4th quarters. Mikal Bridges stepped up when it mattered last night on both ends of the floor the same way that he did in game 1. It's crazy to say that if you had watched game 1 and didn't watch game 2, you had seen the same game twice because the same thing happened 2 games in a row. I don't think the series is over.
Yeah.
The Celtics had the second best road record in NBA history. If any team can go into, a crazy road environment and win 2 games and even up the series, I think Boston has as good of a chance as anybody. But, for them to be down 0-2 in the series after building 2 20-point leads, it's an uphill battle. They've been there before. They came up just short against the Heat in 2023. But, you have to play perfect basketball from here on out. You can't have any more mistakes. And there's nothing that the Celtics have done in the first 2 games of the series to make me believe that they can play mistake-free basketball the rest of the way.
Yeah, honestly, the word I would use is unfathomable. Like, just the fact that things happen the way they did in game 1. And like you said, to see it unfold basically the exact same way and a lot of the same things even happening, between the guys who didn't show up and the guys who kind of ran out of gas inexplicably kind of. And, before we were on here, I was listening back to last week's pod and, you talking about Jason Tatum playing some of the best basketball of his life with the 3 straight 35-point games. And what we talked about with everybody stepping up. And it's just like, not that stuff aged poorly, but it's like, man, what happened? Like, that was like a week ago. And like, I guess you've already kind of answered the question of how concerned are you? There's obviously a path. There's a reason why they built these 20-point leads, but there's also a reason why they let those 20-point leads go. So I won't ask that question because there's kind of an answer with that. Like, this could go the distance. And I want to shift a little bit to talking about the Knicks because tip of the cap to them at this point. They're 5-0 on the road in the playoffs, which is crazy. the 2 20-point comebacks, and obviously there's a lot to be said. I think they're a flawed roster. I think back to the first round when they struggled with the Pistons' depth, and I thought that was going to be their downfall in this series. And again, there's a reason why they've fallen behind by 20 points in these games. But I do sense some similarities to us having these same conversations last year when a different defending champion fell into a 2-0 series hole after losing both games at home to start a series. But it's deeper than just that, because what comes to mind is that, hey, last year the Timberwolves built a team with the sole purpose of matching up with the Denver Nuggets. This year, and we talked about this, we have to go back to find whatever sound system it was when the Mikal Bridges trade happened. We talked about the fact that the Knicks built this wingstop defense with Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby with one team in mind, and it was the Boston Celtics. And I know that at times you think about the fact that Mikal Bridges made the biggest defensive play of the night in 2 consecutive games. And the first time people were just kind of saying it, but then I tweeted it yesterday. It's like, okay, I see why they gave up all those picks to Brooklyn. Like, you can justify it now after these two plays. But I guess was there something to be said about that? Like, again, there's a reason why they fell behind 20, but there's a reason why they came back. I think a lot of it has to do with that this team is built with the Celtics in mind.
Yeah, I mean, OG Anunoby, the numbers, like his matchup numbers for this series are absolutely crazy. He shut down every single player that he's guarded. And Mikal Bridges, like the same way that I said the Celtics have played really good defense for 6 out of the 8 quarters in the first 2 games, like Mikal Bridges has played bad in 6 of the 8 quarters in the first 2 games and has stepped up in the fourth quarter both times. Yeah. But I do think that like that speaks to like his level of self-confidence in himself. He's a winner. He's been in the NBA finals before. He's won national championships before. Like him, Jalen, like Josh Hart, like they have a belief in each other. I think with Cat, like he finally started to get going a little bit last night. He was obviously in foul trouble the first game, but they do have a lot of like OG Anunoby had 29 points in the first game. Like they do have a number of different guys who can step up scoring the ball. And then defensively, like, they play good defense in the first game too. I mean, the Celtics offense is prolific in, the way that they shoot the three and the amount of different guys that they have that can beat you. And the Knicks, held them under 100 points going into overtime the other night and then held them under 100 points last night. So like, again, this is a lot of the conversation today is, and even after game 1, was about what the Celtics did wrong, but there hasn't been a whole lot of conversation about the Knicks haven't played perfect basketball either. They haven't shot the lights out. They haven't, it's not like they are playing their perfect series and Boston is just imploding and that's like the answer. Like the Knicks aren't playing perfect basketball either. They're just playing better when it matters most. They look more free. They look looser. And maybe that's because they're playing with less expectations. But, you would think that with Boston getting, the monkey off their back with winning the title last year, that those moments wouldn't feel so pressure packed. Those moments wouldn't look as tense as they have looked. So I give the Knicks a lot of credit for looking like they've been there before, even though they really haven't in these moments. I think a lot of that has to do with they've played a lot of close games in this postseason already. I think it's like 5 straight games that have been decided by 5 points or fewer or something like that. That number might even be higher. It might be higher than 5 points. Higher than 5 games, but they've played a lot of close games. The Celtics haven't played a lot of close games in this postseason this year. But I also do think that spinning it back to Boston, like that's part of the reason why they are still favored in Vegas to win the series. That's why they're still favored to win the Eastern Conference, even though they're down 2. Tatum, he didn't do his post-game media last night because there was a fire alarm that went off at the TD Garden, but he spoke this morning and, he talked about this is a roster that's been battle tested. They've been through a lot of different playoff moments. They've been down 3-2, having to go on the road, winning game 6 and then win back home at game 7. They've had a situation where they put themselves in a position to be the first team to ever come back from down 3-0 in a playoff series. And they were, potentially a Jason Tatum rolled ankle away from pulling that one off. But, where I think that there are a lot of similarities between this and the 2023 Eastern Conference Finals against the Heat. But I think the biggest difference, with all due respect to that team, the Knicks are just a much better team than that Heat team was. Like they just had a lot of guys that caught fire. They were feeling themselves. They were confident and playing good. Like I'm not taking anything away from the Heat that series. They were playing good basketball, but I don't think there's anybody that could tell you the Celtics weren't the better team in that series, even though they didn't win. Where like the Knicks right now, I'm not saying they're the better team. They're playing better basketball right now, but they're a better team than that Heat team was. And they're going to be a lot harder to pull off that same type of comeback or make that same type of push as Boston was able to 2 years ago.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's like kind of like you talked about 6 bad quarters or 6 good quarters, whatever it is. I think that the Knicks is like they've been the better team for like that comeback that started like with like 5 minutes left in the third in game one, and then started later, I guess, and because they were down 53-73 in game two. Like that, those stretches, they've hands down been the better team, better executing, and also tip of the cap to Mitchell Robinson. I think plus 13 in game one and plus 19 in game two, or had it one way or the other. They're trying to get him off the floor, hacking him or whatever. But guy who didn't necessarily think he was going to be able to find his niche or his role once he came back from injury, and he definitely has done that. Thanks for checking out NBA Sound System Canada on YouTube. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe below and find us wherever you get your podcasts. And on Instagram, we have weekly episodes and bonus content throughout the week.